Now, in this video, I'm going to talk about communism, the economic theory that has never quite existed in any country, but has come quite close indeed, such as, for example, in China, North Korea, and of course the Red Bear itself, USSR, and has definitely come to the point where it has been quite over-discussed, although at the same time, quite frankly, over-dismissed largely because of Cold War era propaganda and hatred, so I wanted to talk about it objectively. Perhaps I should say discuss an over-discussed topic in an under-discussed manner. Firstly, to understand its reasons, we must understand its ways. Communism as an economic theory exists at the opposite side of capitalism, at the side of absolute security and very little liberty to the individual. See, communism is still about the individual. Every economic theory is about the individual. The state is pointless without the individual, but unlike capitalists, communists believe the state must have absolute liberty over its community, as long as it provides them with security in the form of food, housing, and of course entertainment, etc. But the individual must understand that they are an equal part of a community, but no lesser or greater than that. They may exercise their talents, raise a family, and have hobbies, but they may not own anything for themselves. The community must own everything and distribute it to everyone for use. But the community also owns you and may ask you to do work for it. If the last part may sound like slavery, a communist would deny that, because you are the community and the community is you. Also, the idea of owning does not mean much in a communist utopia. So, in general, it revolves around the moral theory of utilitarianism to value actions in the achieved balance of pain and pleasure of everybody in the favor of pleasure. But this idea of community owning everything, meaning that you also own everything, can get quite problematic in many people's eyes, in fact quite justifiably, because to own is not to benefit from, but to have control of. And if the state has control of everything, it truly owns everything. But as long as the state stays communist, it should be meaningless. But how does one achieve such, I'd argue, superhuman feat to have a fair government? After all, even today, with all the regulations and liberty the citizens wield, the government still manages to stay corrupt. In the communist world, where everyone is equal in wealth but few, the government, to be more exact, wields unequal ability to not be equal in wealth. It would create a quite dangerous situation to the system itself. In fact, in history you can see that in every very socialist countries like the USSR, China, and Cuba, leaders lived in luxury. Mao, for example, had 100 villas all across the country, and the Kim family has been enjoying a lifestyle of luxury uncomparable to one of the average North Korean. Also, we must consider the problems of lack of liberty and more specifically opportunity. After all, in a life where we lack those, even though we may not use many of them, it still creates the pleasure of freedom. Locking one in a cage creates the most security, but the least liberty. The biggest pain of a prison, after all, is the lack of opportunity. But then again, one could argue that if this one knows nothing of the outside of the cage, they are not affected by this problem, albeit we must ask whether that is right to do or not. Although we can of course also argue at the same time that giving a little bit of something very good to few is worse than giving none to all, because of envy that would be created. There is also, of course, the problem of initiative, which would be money. If all are equal, all must be paid equally, regardlessly of the work they do. This is not exactly a baseline for capitalism. Well, actually quite overlooked as such and used as probably the most popular anti-communist argument. It is an idea of meritocracy, which by itself is, I'd argue, actually a form of communism, simply with a different motto. To each according to their abilities, instead to the well-known to each according to their needs, from each according to their abilities. But to avoid ambiguity, I would not call it communism, but anyways, it is a quite reasonable argument. In our capitalist societies, many people work very hard to learn new things, up their status just for money. This was not a problem in, say, USSR, because money still existed in true communism. It would be quite problematic. Less people would be willing to work for the community and simply would enjoy the utopia. Even if they were true communists who wanted to improve the community, they still lacked the good stress, if you will, of their well-being, being a danger to motivate them. For the last, I have quite interesting arguments I've heard, albeit not necessarily pro-communist, but rather anti-liberty, which I want to discuss, is actually a quite textbook argument. It is as follows. If given liberty, others are given the liberty to take your liberty, and leave you with neither liberty neither security. If given security, you may not have liberty, but your security is secure because of your security. This, of course, can be refuted by saying that balance can exist, which it does in all capitalist countries. This is actually quite strong against pure capitalism. After all, that is exactly what happened to the serfs in the medieval times. In general, I had come to the conclusion that a pure form of neither capitalism or communism can exist perfectly, but my goal wasn't to tell you that, but rather to help you decide. Thank you for watching.